Hi, everybody. It's Susan again, and I'm back this time to talk about the week ahead and the full moon in Sagittarius that's coming up on the 23rd of May. So we're in a really auspicious period of time, lots of really benefic action happening, but it's still a mixed bag. We are in the times that we are, so it's still a little bit of everything all the time. I wanted to mention also that what I wanted to focus on now is, let's say, my way of using astrology. And I feel this is quite important because a lot of times people are asking, especially in the comments, what's going to happen to me? And I really don't work this way with astrology. I really do believe we have a duty to ourselves to grow and to learn from life and not to expect that some outer force will come and magically change everything or worse, ruin everything. And so this is how I think of astrology. It's the best way to use astrology, in my opinion, that we're using these aspects and these transits that come across our charts or into our experience collectively, perhaps, as a way of really growing towards our true nature, which is not this personality and it's not related to these everyday sort of details of life. And I know those details are very important, and at some stages of life, they're more important than others. But still, we essentially are here for understanding who we truly are, not in the sense of personality. Again, not this egoic sense of who am I, who do I identify as, but rather as the truth of our nature. And to understand how astrology works from that perspective, we need to participate. We need to give something to receive something, as it were. And we need to make an attempt to work with the energy rather than expecting that something is happening to us. And so I wanted to set the stage by saying that because this is a week coming up to the full moon where we have this energy for real, we can call it chaotic change, even if it's at times going to be very pleasant. I'm just after yesterday, we had a conjunction between the Sun and Uranus. You can hear more about these things in the video that I did already for the month of May, where I highlighted a number of these conjunctions that are coming up. So I won't delve too deeply in them, but they still are, they matter a lot to what's going on. And so as I'm doing this, this is now the 14th of May that I'm doing this video. And we're just after that Sun and Uranus conjunction. So a lot of initiative for change. And again, these placements matter more individually if you have personal points at these degree points. And if you look at where my pointer is on the screen, you can see the degree points are mentioned next to the glyph for the sign and or for the planet rather. And so you can see this is, for example, the connection between Venus and Uranus, which is coming up on the 18th of May. So if you start to understand how to read a chart, it's really part of moving towards astrology rather than expecting something from astrology. And so every time I post these, I'm emphasizing the chart because I'm hoping that you'll learn along with what I'm sharing here. It's a lot more interesting than just watching my face as I'm saying these things. And so, for example, here we have the date of this particular chart. So it's not the date I'm recording, which is the 14th of May, but the date that I chose to start with, which is the 18th of May. So that's Saturday, the 18th of May, roughly around 3 p.m. Universal Time, which I use because we're all over the world, all of you viewing. And this is the tropical zodiac. So you'll see that here. If it's the sidereal, it would say sidereal zodiac. That is not the same as Vedic astrology. The sidereal zodiac is different to Vedic astrology, although it's often used in Vedic astrology. But the tropical zodiac is dependent on the movement or tropos of the sun. And then I prefer the whole sign system, and especially for general readings like this, it's really the only way that we can do a general reading like this. So we use the whole sign system. You can also, if you're choosing, say, Porphyry or Placidus or Coke houses or whatever, you'll see that written here. It would be Placidus if this were a Placidus chart. I try to avoid that because there's a lot of intercepted houses and so on, which makes it a little complicated for a global, let's say, delineation of the energy. I find this much more direct. So That's a preference. It's not a judgment. So you can do what works for you. Anyway, so I want you to get to be familiar with these points in the chart so that you can understand more fully each time you watch a video like this, what is actually happening in your own chart. So here, for example, the conjunction between Venus and Uranus that's coming up this weekend is at 23 degrees of Taurus. That's the little glyph for the sign of Taurus, and it's 24 minutes. So you would want to look for a placement in your own chart that is probably 2 or 3 degrees on either side of that. So just add or subtract 2 or 3 degrees to the 23, 24 Taurus that you see there. That applies to any conjunction. We're going to talk about this in a moment, but what I really wanted to focus on before we get to this period of the days ahead is this approaching conjunction with Mars and the North Node. The reason I find this extremely compelling right now is because of the state of the world. And when Mars conjuncts the North Node, collectively, we can see some violence and drama, especially when Mars is strong. It's in its own sign. So Mars is the ruler of Aries. And when we understand rulerships and the importance of rulerships, we really get the extra details of the sign and the message behind the configuration within the sign. And so Mars is giving the quality that we know of Aries to Aries. It's not because Aries just is like that. It's because Mars rules Aries, that Aries is the way it is. And same for all of the other signs. And so when Mars comes across Rahu, or the north node of the moon, we can get real confusion and explosive anger, some real projection, real frustration, real energy around the issue that Mars represents. All of that compelling, dramatic, impulsive, perhaps angry, at the very least assertive, perhaps even violent energy. Mars, after all, is the god of war. And so we don't have to pretend that we're not in a time of great war, like so many that have gone before us. So why I wanted to mention this is because Rahu, or the North Node, doesn't simply expand things. So a lot of times you hear astrologers talking about the North Node as the direction we're going towards, or as something that just expands. And although it will do that, it can even create obsessional behavior, obsessive thinking, especially when it's really tightly conjunct a planet. If you have moon, sun, or moon, especially with the North Node, you might be aware you have this psychological intensity that requires some tending to. People born around eclipses have intense lives often. They have very strong experiences. And if you add Mars into the mixture with that, you get a lot of projection, a lot of aggression, a lot of flashes of anger. It's something that is a feature of this moment, and especially of individuals who have that in their natal charts. So I just wanted to mention this because we have this combination here, along with some really interesting new energy, but I want to make it personal. I want to pull this in towards, let's say, what your experience could be of this, or how you might deal with this energy. Because Mars on a North Node, as I said, it's not just about more of that, it's about clouding the judgment. So Rahu's color in the Indian astrology is smoky. It's known as a smoky planet that obscures things. It makes things difficult. If we think about obsessions, that's one way of describing them. Obsessions are often amorphous things. It's an idea, but it's not necessarily it's often not constructive. You can think of addictions, for example. In this case, Rahu would also represent something like that. It's confused energy. We're not seeing clearly. It's foggy. Rahu has a similar quality to Neptune in that sense, but it's the nodal axis should be considered to be problematic, and not just simply bringing in new things, but things that we need to deal with, because the North Node is territory that we're not familiar with. It's territory that we're not accustomed to in the same way that we are with the South Node. It's where we are trying to understand and grow overall, in a general sense. And then when you throw Mars into the mix, we're trying to understand how to use anger, how to understand anger. And when we are angry, when we experience anger, we lose our sense of judgment. So Mars and North Node combinations often have difficulty with what you might describe as good judgment. This is emphasized, and we'll talk about this at the full moon section, by the Jupiter coming up to a sextile to lovely Neptune. So this can be, if we're really working on ourselves and we really have an understanding of the relationship to our mind and consciousness, we might find this very spiritual. It can be very uplifting, and otherwise it can be a little delusional. It can be something that brings a lot of optimism, over optimism, or wishful thinking, or what almost like New Age thinking, like the idea that solar flares will cause awakening consciousness in everyone somehow, or that an astrological configuration will cause everyone to wake up. This is delusional thinking. This is not at all a reflection of how our mind works or how consciousness works. It's just simply not like that. So this Mars North Node will create the same kind of delusion, but in the sense of now Mars. So it's a North Node ruled by Mars with Mars conjunct. And of course, it's something that happens every 2 years, but not always in the same sign. So this is Mars now in Aries. We've had this before when Mars was in Taurus meeting the North Node, but this is now Mars meeting the North Node in Aries, and that's a different vibe. Now, why I want you to focus in on this personally is because we are currently surrounded by trauma, and we do pick up on the collective unconscious. We do pull in the energy of other experiences, whether that be from other lives or from other experiences we've had in this lifetime that we may not even be aware of, that we may not even remember. Maybe there are things that are coming up to our conscious awareness that we had buried down for safety reasons and for reasons of pragmatism or need. And so this is something important because this is happening perhaps on an individual level, but it's certainly happening also on a collective level where trauma around genocide is being reactivated in people around the world. Now, it is true that we have an experience of certainly the last 5 or 6 centuries of just immense suffering around issues of genocide. It's not exclusive to this period. It certainly happened before, but we are living in a more populated planet with more information available and more information exchanged amongst ourselves in such a way that we're aware of all of this suffering, as well as picking it up on the unconscious and energetic level. So many people, even though there may have been patterns of migration or many generations back, will have still a residual trauma in their DNA and in their mind, in their conscious or unconscious mind. And this is important to remember at these times of conjunctions like the Mars North Node, because people will be acting out and people are easily triggered. This trauma being triggered is real. It takes over the body and mind, and it means that the prefrontal cortex is no longer functioning. What that represents is a person who's not able to think in a creative mode or in a mode of solution, solving problems, dealing with issues in a constructive, harmonious way. There will be a lashing out. Now, we see this live every single day in Israel, for example, and what they're doing in Gaza. We're seeing this trauma, and this story is evolving in Africa in the same way in several countries. This will have been a pattern in just about every region of the world. I'm trying to think of one that may not have suffered some kind of horrible such type of genocide or otherwise generational trauma. I honestly can't. I can't think of one. And I want you to just bear that in mind, because these are challenging times. And when we don't explore what's going on within, we project all of that outwardly. We project anger and resentment and frustration and hostility to total strangers. It might even be your neighbor, or it might be happening to you from people that you don't know. And this is a difficult situation to resolve because you're not dealing with rationality. So the only thing that we can do is pull back and recognize our own trauma to whatever extent we have it or that we're aware of it, and to whatever extent it is part of our heritage, part of our lineage. And this is where I work a lot with people on their family stories and how they are still grappling with these things that have happened in the family going back. And this lashing out or defensiveness sometimes comes in ways where we're even confused by our own behavior because it doesn't make sense in the real world, in the so-called real world that we're living in today, but it made sense before. So it's a time for immense compassion for ourselves, for other people, and it's a time to really recognize what our goal is. And now we take another Mars word. What is the goal here? Mars on the North Node, if we take it to the higher place, to the more practical, useful place, it is what is the goal that I have in this moment? And that will be different for each of you. It will show up in very different ways, but certainly it should contain some kind of degree of harmony, that we're seeking harmony in our lives. And so we do have this emotional intensity at this time that makes it difficult if we get caught up in the collective disruption, the collective anger, the collective rage. And I'm not suggesting for a moment that we shouldn't engage with the energy of anger to make change happen. But I just want to share an anecdote from my own teacher, Thich Nhat Hanh, who came to the US in the 1960s because of the what the Vietnamese call the war of aggression that the Americans were waging in Vietnam, and trying to persuade American officials and American figures to work towards peace and to end the war. And this is at the time where he befriended Martin Luther King, and they decided to participate in a march. There was an anti-war march or a war protest march, and Thai said, "I don't want to participate in that. I don't want to walk in an anti-war march or a protest march. I want to walk for peace." And so that group of people, I think it was 1966, because if I remember correctly, it's the year that I was born, but I might be wrong. It might have been 67, but I suspect it was 66 when they walked. And I think it was in New York City. This you can look up. And the marchers were yelling and screaming and, throwing their fists in the air and really showing their anger, manifesting their anger. And Thai instructed his followers, which was a much smaller group, to simply walk in silence and do what has become known as mindful walking meditation. And so this practice of recognizing peace that can only come from within. We can only accomplish this feeling of peace from deep inside. We have to cultivate our relationship with anger and recognize that the anger itself is rightly called a poison in both yoga and Buddhist teachings. The poisons are all of those negative emotions, which we know now biologically actually have a negative effect on our rate of inflammation, for example, and our heart rate and our digestion. And so that poison is up to us to extract. We need to extract this poison of Mars, or the overreactivity aspect of Mars, especially in Aries, where we then project more of it out into the world. And so look at what goal you have for your life, for the world, for your environment around you, and work towards that goal in a way that is conscious. Being conscious is not about having nice beads around your neck or knowing how to do certain postures or knowing certain mantras. It's all useless. It's a waste. It's spiritual bypassing if you don't practice to cleanse yourself, purify yourself to the point that you're not spreading this tainted energy out into the world. And it's crucial right now that we think this way, because we do have such a tinderbox. Everything is really on a razor's edge, and people are angry. And I fully understand. I appreciate that. I work on my own anger, and I also want to mention too that anybody who says they don't have anger is again bypassing, or they're simply lying. They're trying to deceive. Again, another Rahu word, deception. Because every great teacher I've had the great honor to have met in 35 years of working towards this understanding has always acknowledged anger in them. whether it be the Dalai Lama or Thich Nhat Hanh, my yoga teachers, Swami Veda, and all of these great teachers who have deep understanding of the human side, the mind, the difficulty that we have with the sanskaras, or the things that keep coming back of the mind, and recognizing that that requires attention constantly on an ongoing basis. And so there are very few saints in the world who don't have some relationship or another to anger. And it's important to acknowledge what is true for us and acknowledge that it's there, because if we don't acknowledge what is in us, we receive it as a projection from others as well. When we have purified the anger, we don't receive these projections from other people. You're probably familiar with this mudra, the Abhaya mudra. It's known in Sanskrit. And it's the peace mudra. You see the statues of the Buddha doing this, and Christ does the same. It's acknowledging that I've come here with no arms. I've come here with no ill will, and it's when it's done in that way of cultivating peace and inner serenity. There's no aggression. There's nothing. There's nothing pushing outwards. It's more of a place of withdrawal. It's a place of holding energy and subsuming it and transmuting the energy of anger or hostility. And so this is an important point I want to emphasize right now, because we have behind all of these really lovely passages, all these really nice, sometimes very brief but meaningful transits, we do have this underlying issue. And if we only focus on how wonderful everything is, we're missing an opportunity to use that positive energy to help us get over the obstacles that are created by the negative, more harmful energies. And I say that negativity not in a judgmental sense, but in the sense that anger, as I mentioned, is a poison. This has always been described as such in the ancient texts, and the reason being is that it literally poisons our physiology, and it certainly poisons the mind. So a mind-body is inextricably linked, and one can go off and the other will follow. So anyway, enough of the ranting. I just wanted to state that up front, because this is very much a part of our times. I want to just get to now the 18th of May and show you this lovely quality here that is part of what is backing up this Mars, but it also can be very unsettled energy. Venus is with Uranus, it's in Taurus, so there is something already brewing around, for example, financial systems. We know collectively that the financial systems are in a state of uproar, and the BRICS has just recently announced that many BRICS countries, important ones, are pulling back more and more away from the US dollar, and the US dollar collapse is really imminent. This was something that was already forecast, not just by astrologers, but by financial experts a couple of years ago, many years ago in some cases, but it's accelerating now, and this is the change that we're in for. I suspect this could also be part of the change of Jupiter moving into Gemini over the next year as well for the US dollar. Mercury represents commerce, and Jupiter is moving into the 7th house of the US chart, where Mars is in that case, and there will be some tension, resolution, a need for course correction with what might be described as opponents or even enemies. So this is something that is in the background of all of our experiences. So do stay aware rather of your own finances, your own situation. Be flexible, be pragmatic. Taurus is extremely pragmatic. It's really feet on the ground. I know how to plant my carrots, and I know exactly when to pull them up. And this is Taurus. So be pragmatic. It is the time in our experience of life to be extremely skillful and practical. Again, if I come back to this idea of what astrology can do for us, this is a wrong way of thinking about life itself. It was often people who are challenged to find their way in life, or who sink into depression, are doing so because there's too much focus on the self and not enough focus on what we can do for other people. And that's not about being a victim, being used by other people and so on. I'm not talking about this victim mentality. I'm talking about what can we do for each other. And if you start to look towards what you can do for another person and use that Mars North Node as a way of understanding this could be a new goal, it could be an opportunity to set a new goal, then you really have this brilliant occasion to turn not only the social circumstances around in your area of life, but also your own life itself, based on Venus, new values, based on a new way of relating to people, based on a new aspect of your connection with life itself that might come through a need because of something being disrupted. Taurus is easily disrupted, doesn't like change. And so often with Uranus, it's going to come in the way that can be really challenging, especially in terms of our actual surroundings. But Uranus with Venus can be an insight. It can be that you're getting insight. And the more, again, that you focus on yourself as an actor, as somebody who has agency, as somebody who can do something for yourself, then the more you'll be able to move gracefully, which is another Taurian Venus word, towards a skillful end, let's say. The same day, but later on the 18th of May, we also have a Sun conjunct Jupiter. Now, this is a really beautiful aspect as well. It is Jupiter is in the heart of the Sun, and therefore it's considered to be a kazemi or burnt by the Sun. And so there is an element of distraction or an element of maybe briefly losing this energy, the quality of Jupiter. But fundamentally, it is still Jupiter, and Venus is still Venus, and they're both benefic, and they bring something helpful. Both of them are traditionally spiritual teachers. Jupiter is the teacher of the gods. Venus is the teacher of what is known as the asura, so the evil ones, the difficult ones. And so Venus was always given a higher place in ranking, actually, because it's more difficult to teach difficult people than it is to teach gods. And the gods are gods. So it's an easier gig if you are teaching people who are already in a place of deeper and higher understanding. So just to say that although there are some challenging aspects in terms of classical astrology, these conjunctions can pose problems in the moment or in the time around these conjunctions. They are like a rebirth. They're a new cycle that's beginning, and it's an opportunity. And it's an opportunity for what? For the Jupiterian wisdom to emerge, for the qualities of Venus, harmony and getting along and being aware of one's own values. Now, the other aspect of this is a couple of really interesting, slightly tricky things, of course. That is that Mercury has just moved out of a square to Pluto. And so Mercury square Pluto is about digging deep into our understanding. So I'm adding this into what I've just ranted about earlier, which is trying to understand more deeply. Mercury in Taurus is about understanding our values, understanding the value of things, understanding relationship, understanding basic things that are earthly and grounded, practical things. Thinking will be more practical, much less chaotic or impulsive as it has been since the beginning of March. I think it was the 10th of March that Mercury moved into Aries, and it only just emerges on the 15th. So as I'm speaking to you fast, I'm aware, Mercury's at the last degree of Aries. So it's moving in to Taurus only on the 15th of May. And so this square to Pluto is about digging deep. It's about really trying to understand. Again, there can be a commercial aspect to this because, of course, Pluto is in the sign that represents society in general. Mercury represents communication as well as commerce and methods of communication. And so that can also mess things up in some way, where we have had, I think it was what is it, Starlink? I think Starlink had some issues with its system. It was somehow downgraded. I'm not sure exactly how or what that meant. But apparently, because of the solar flares that we've just had now over the last 4 or 5 days, maybe 3 or 4 days since the weekend, there was some activity that got challenge, let's say, the interactivity either between the satellites in the air and the Earth, or the satellites themselves were downgraded. I'm not sure exactly how that happened, but this can be part of this story where technology goes awry and things start to malfunction or cause issues, cause difficulties. Another aspect from that Pluto, the same Pluto there, is that the moon is building up to a trine. A moon trine Pluto is really, again, an emphasis on our emotions. And probably by the time the sun and Jupiter meet, the moon will be trining Pluto, because the moon moves quickly. And that will be later anyway, in let's say a couple of hours or so from this 18th of May, 1 p.m. Universal Time, Venus-Uranus conjunction. So it's interesting because the moon is ruled by Venus in Libra, all about relationships. I've just spoken quite a bit about that. And then Pluto itself, if we look at the modern rulership, I tend to prefer the traditional, so I would be looking to Saturn, but nonetheless, Uranus resonates quite a lot with Aquarian energy. And so that Venus-Uranus conjunction is also participating, at least symbolically, in the trine that the moon is about to make to Pluto. Moon trine Pluto is a deep reflection on one's emotions, and again, with everything that I just said in mind. So that can, of course, be in your personal life as well. The moon has just escaped an opposition to Neptune, so there's a bit better, let's say, more clear-headedness. There was a little bit of wishy-washiness only hours before, when the moon was opposite Neptune. Now, which doesn't mean it's not still there. It just means it's not exact anymore. So again, Neptune is pesky. It's still there. It's still very much a part of this whole story. This whole week, it is in a sextile very closely with the Sun and Jupiter. And of course, it keeps its broad sextile to Pluto forever and ever, for most of our lives anyway. The other aspect that is important is the Chiron, which is on the other side of the North Node. As we go forward in time, hang on, let me just go a little bit day by day. So this will not be exact to the minute, but I'm just going day by day. So as we go forward now, on the 19th, we do get that conjunction. So it's already building as I'm speaking to, it's already building. So it's certainly well within orb. On the 19th, we get the conjunction with Mars on the North Node. And that is in opposition to the moon on the South Node. Now, the moon on the South Node is not happy. It's a difficult energy, because again, it's where our emotions are. We might feel bereft of connection, or we might feel some kind of lack around emotions. And again, it's this question of confusion in terms of direction. Moon opposite Mars is deeply emotional energy. It's very, very prone to lashing out. And so I don't know how to say this, but I don't want to create fear, because often people resort to fear, again, when you're not in your own energy, when you're not in your own power, and you're not recognizing the true nature of self, you will be made to fear things that you don't understand. And it's important to understand that this is part of the mechanism of what we're living through right now, that this is actually a deliberate mechanism that is being deployed through the news media, through government messaging, through multipolar or globalist organizations. The messaging is all based on fear. And when, as I mentioned, when we're angry or when we're fearful, the prefrontal cortex does not work. Prefrontal cortex, it means here, literally the front of the head. And that is where we process information to find solutions and to recognize something can change. There's a great degree of creativity that lights up in that part of the brain when we are thinking in new and innovative ways. But it resorts to the animal brain, or the reptilian brain at the base of our neck, the stem of the brain, which is our instinctive brain. It's the reactive part of our life. We get triggered by that, by fear, by anger. And this is why you're being taught to hate other people. You're being taught to hate leaders of particular countries. You're being taught to hate people who you live right next door to. You're being taught to hate people because of their appearance or their political views or whatever. And none of it is true. It's all coming from the desire to stir up this irrationality, so you're much more easily manipulated. So as I mentioned these things, don't fall into that. Don't fall into this fear, because then you're losing your control. You're losing power over yourself, and you're much more easily manipulated. So please do that inner work. It will serve you for life. It's part of a bigger story of your personal growth and healing. So as we go through the phases, as we go through time now, the sun is moving away from Jupiter on the 19th, ever so slowly. It is going to move into, on the 21st of May, it's moving into Gemini. And now we have Venus moving up to Jupiter. And now we have Mars that is moving towards Chiron. And we've already had Chiron and the North Node conjoining, and that was in February. And now we have Mars having completed this North Node journey, and Mars is going towards Chiron. And now we have an understanding of what it is that we need to work on, or what is the goal that we want to work towards, or what is the effect of anger and hatred and division. Mars, that's another Mars word, division, separation, that's a Mars word. And to understand that, and then how can we work with that? Chiron, how can we heal that? Chiron in Aries is very strongly related to our identity, our sense of who we are, what the identity is that we hold. And when we get a better grip on who we truly are, we recognize that much of what we get upset about, or what a lot of the things we get defensive about, are imagined. They're entirely imagined ideas of who we really are. And they are changeable, they're vulnerable, and that's why we get angry. That's why the ego finds it very difficult to withstand any criticism, because if we believe we are that, then we cannot tolerate any kind of criticism, and we perceive everything as an attack, or we get easily triggered by things that we don't like. And so this Mars Chiron is an opportunity, and this comes up slowly over the days before the moon. Actually, I'll pull in the actual chart of the moon. Before I do that, I just wanted to point out that here we have the 21st of May, we've got the moon ruled by Mars in opposition to Mercury, which is a really lovely way of expressing now understanding, realizing something that we're realizing that we can process, let's say, based on that Mars and North Node conjunction, keeping in mind that Venus, of course, is ruling Mars, while Mars is ruling the moon, and the moon is exalted in Taurus. Again, it pulls it in symbolically into this configuration, even though it's also an opposition. So let's come directly to the chart here of the Sagittarius full moon. I won't have time, I'm afraid, to do the sign by sign this week. I'm just going to put up another short where it shows you which house this is happening in. I'm actually packing up my stuff to put it in storage, because I'm coming back here to Spain next October. But in the meantime, I'm traveling quite a bit over the next few months. So it's a bit of a hectic week at the moment. So here we have the full moon at 2 degrees 55 of Gemini to 2 degrees 55 of Sagittarius. So that is where we look for the full moon in Sagittarius. And Sagittarius is ruled by Jupiter. And Jupiter, of course, has that quality of, understanding and magnanimity, being magnanimous. It's easier to say it that way. And that quality of teaching and understanding, and what we have faith in. This is a big word for all things Sagittarius, all things Jupiter. And so here we have another sextile to Pluto by the moon. So we first had a trine, we have a sextile to the moon, and now a trine from Pluto to the sun. And that trine to Pluto, from Pluto to the sun, is important to hold, because all the way through the last 10 days of May, we have a lot of planets coming into that trine. So we'll first have the sun, then Venus, and then Jupiter, and then later on later in June, we're going to also have Mercury coming into trine from its place of rulership. So a really, really interesting time that we're engaging in depth and profound change. Pluto is for me an opportunity to understand our shadow, understand what we're not really aware of, what we need to change, what we're not fully acknowledging. But especially with this Jupiterian quality of this full moon, it brings in Jupiter in a way that we can use towards abundance and fulfillment and just being happy, happy for no reason. This is the important thing. You also benefit from cultivating, we all benefit from cultivating happiness as a state of being and not waiting to be happy, because if we're expecting to be happy based on a relationship or based on a new item of clothing or a car or a bigger house or whatever, we're missing the point. We're that kind of dependency keeps us weak and it keeps us vulnerable, and therefore we cannot be happy. So Jupiter is about recognizing that their happiness is there in all circumstances. As my teacher again, Thich Nhat Hanh, would say, you have all that you need in this moment to be happy right now, in this moment. If you're still breathing, you have everything that you need to be happy. And a lot of people will protest at that. But if you really look deeply at that understanding, it's very, very true and very powerful. And you can entirely opt out as well, and you can continue to be battered around by the circumstances of life and consider yourself a victim. That's entirely optional, which takes me to the other Jupiterian sign, which is Pisces, which is related to that victim consciousness, because there can be this feeling of giving up, and especially with Saturn in Pisces, this feeling of life is too damn hard. I can't do this thing. And so we want to keep understanding that the Saturn in Pisces, when we take it to a higher level, is about overcoming. It's about taking responsibility for the true nature of life, for our beliefs, for the things that we have faith in, and expanding our consciousness. That's Pisces. And not waiting for somebody else to save us, and not expecting that circumstances will make us happy. So this beautiful full moon coincides also with the Venus-Jupiter conjunction, which is now replacing the Sun conjunct Jupiter, and Venus, of course, having just met up with Uranus as well, is a very new Venus. It's a very energetically new Venus. Venus herself will meet up with the Sun. I think it's at 13 degrees of Gemini, so it will take a couple of weeks before she finally gets there. But nonetheless, she's re-energized in lots and lots of ways here. And that's also in a very, very strong trine now, almost exact trine to Neptune. Venus has already made her exact trine. Now Jupiter is about to make the exact trine to Neptune. So this is what I want to point out, because when we look at rulerships of the lunation, for example, Jupiter, again, is abundant. It's with Venus, which in Indian astrology is considered to be not helpful, because this is considered a kind of a planetary war where they're in competition. They don't get along. As I said, there's a certain competition about the mythology around them as teachers, and who would be considered the most important teacher. But the Venus quality is about what I desire. It's my desires. And Jupiter's like, get over yourself, just be happy. And so there is an incompatibility here between the two of them. It's not a huge incompatibility. It's certainly something that one can adjust to, because we can also desire to work towards our awakening, towards consciousness, towards peace and harmony and all the benefic things that we would want for ourselves and for others. So if our desires are petty, and if our desires are selfish and really temporal things exclusively, because of course we can always want to have the chocolate ice cream, there's nothing wrong with that, but if our desires are based on those kinds of things, then Jupiter will mess us up, because Jupiter will expand and bring more of it, but coming from a place of what can also be a Jupiterian quality, which is greed, excess, overdoing it. So this is something to be aware of as well. It's part of this story, especially because Jupiter itself is technically not in the line of vision of the moon, and therefore it's what we call an inconjunct or a quincunx. It's not in an easy relationship to the moon that it actually is in rulership of. And And so until Jupiter moves into Gemini, it's not going to be in an easy relationship, except in terms of trines, but in terms of full moons in Sagittarius, it's not going to be an easy relationship until this time next summer. And even then, it's not so easy because Jupiter is not in, in great dignity in Gemini. Let's leave that for next year. So all this to say that Jupiter itself is having a bit of a struggle with Venus. The quality of the outcome will depend on the nature of what we desire. And also because Neptune itself is influencing both of those planets. There can be delusion. There can be a certain sense of not really being too sure of the situation, of potentially being tricked again, potentially not seeing everything that we need to see. And if we really do the work, and if we really clarify the nature of our thoughts and really dig deep, we can use that Neptune in a sextile to Jupiter Venus as a way of opening ourselves to compassion. And this would, of course, be the ideal outcome, especially for that moon in Sagittarius, which often can be very impatient and single-minded and a bit selfish, let's face it. A moon in fire signs tends to be selfish and really driven. But let that be a desire or a drive for something of the greater good, and use the best of this energy for both improvement of your own circumstances, your own life, but also of that of the people around us, and know that we are 100% dependent on each other, and we are absolutely interconnected in a way that we can't escape. And so I leave you with that. I won't be able to do, as I said, the sign by sign this time around. I'm afraid I just don't have the time, but I look forward to seeing you periodically as I go forward. I'm going to be going a little bit deeper into my book in the weeks ahead, amongst the traveling and the retreat that we're doing. Oh, by the way, if you want, there's still a chance to join us on the retreat. I think we're now 14 people, and that's going to be a really lovely few days in Ireland. If you're able to join us, then do let me know. You can send me a message on my contact page on my website. All are welcome up until, let's say, a week before. We can still accommodate people. It's just that it's a bit tricky for accommodation unless you can organize that yourself if we leave it too late. But we do have a lovely group coming from the 6th till the 9th of June in Northern Ireland, just north of Belfast. So you're welcome to join us. And otherwise, I will be a little bit into my book and dipping deeper into finalizing the translation of the original, and then adding my 2 cents around that, all of that, in terms of how to use the book. And I will be really focused on that this summer. I'm not taking many appointments as a result, but I will be in touch periodically as we go through the summer, as things come up, as interesting things come up. I also plan to do a live reading session when I'm back. I'll be back in Brussels next week, and I'll do a live reading session for the Jupiter and Gemini, which I think I'll probably do it around that weekend of the, what is it? I don't know, 25th or something. What is that, Thursday? Yeah, probably around the 25th, 26th of May. I would do something like that. So I'll announce that in the community page, as always, on YouTube. So I wish you every joy, every delight of all of the potential of this energy. And I also wish you a peaceful and a harmonious Sagittarius full moon. So love to all of you. Bye-bye.